Melita, Manitoba. Grain silos, oil pump jacks, windswept cropland, and beneath it all, one of the most rare grassland birds.
Jessica's going to get them out, and then she's going to put them in this larger bucket, and we're going to cover them up. Female, or not the female, the young.
Now, to many people, this field might just look like any old plain field, but it's not. It has burrowing owls nesting here. Now, they require very specific habitat type. They're endangered, just like many grassland birds, because that habitat, it's disappearing, and it has been for decades. But thankfully, the people behind me here are committed to the fate of this species, and they're working to help it survive into the future. Alex Froese is director of the Manitoba Burrowing Owl Recovery Project. She spends summers in fields like this, with these very tiny, very endangered creatures.
Yes, he's a little dirty, but they live in the ground and they eat mice and they use cow manure to line their nests too, so it's kind of a dirty place.
It's mid-July, and that means it's time for the owls to get a physical.
We just wrap them in the pillowcase just because it calms them down when their head's covered. They can't see everything.
There's a weigh-in.
Well, that's a very good behaved little owl.
And Froese fits them with some jewelry.
We banned burrowing owls, so they're found across Western Canada, so Manitoba through British Columbia.
Froese has dedicated 13 years to conserving burrowing owls. The program has released over 200 into the wild.
This one will go back in the bucket.
Yeah.
However, the outlook remains bleak. Conservation efforts began in the 1980s. 76 breeding pairs were detected here in 1982. From the late 80s to mid-90s, owls were relocated from Ontario, Saskatchewan, and North Dakota to Manitoba. But the efforts didn't stick. The Manitoba population fluctuated, peaking at around 80 owls between 2006 and 2009. The population dipped after that. Then, in between 2020 and this year, 3 pairs and a few loners were found, thanks to Froese's efforts. But the species is still in trouble.
An endangered species, first of all, is a challenge. There's just not as many around, of course, so to lose even one can be quite devastating.
Currently, there are fewer than 1,000 pairs in Canada, more than 3 times below federal targets. She questions how to meet that without receiving any federal or provincial funding for the past 4 years.
It's really disheartening to put in so much work and effort and care so much, because this isn't just a job for me. This is my life.
A team from Assiniboine Park Zoo is here to help run tests.
Needle's long, veins tiny. But at least you don't need a ton of blood from it.
Blood goes on these cards so zoo researchers can find out the sex of the owls.
And in order for Alex to decide who's going to be released, who's going to come back to the zoo, we need to know who's male, who's female, or else we won't necessarily be lucky enough to pick the right ones for breeding next year.
Come fall, Alex will decide which owls will spend the winter at the zoo. The goal? To seed the next generation, which will be released in spring. On average, researchers release up to 10 pairs per year, and a few of their young. Dr. Charlene Berkvin says the species wouldn't survive without the breeding program. Migrating to Mexico is getting more treacherous, climate change being a factor.
And some of the owls that have been tracked on that trip, we've seen them die from being hit by cars, we've seen them die from being predated, but extreme weather events are also playing a significant impact. So we've had ones that storms blow in and kill large numbers of the transmitted ones too.
The threats generally and the pressure that this species faces to survive into the future are immense. Yet you are here every summer for over a decade. How do you feel? How do you keep going every year knowing that the odds are kind of stacked against you and this bird?
I know. I feel like it's always a challenge. I have ups and downs. There's obviously days you think that you might not be able to continue because you don't have the funding. Or you have a year that you have more losses, right? And that's nature. You are going to experience times where a whole nest is gone overnight and you don't really know the reason. I am maybe overly optimistic sometimes, but my passion definitely drives me, and I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. I feel like this is what I'm here to do, and I care so much about it that I'll keep going. If I'm not doing this work, who is?
The answer could one day be someone like Zoe Bostic.
Well, I really like the idea of being a biologist when I grow up.
The 11-year-old birder won a competition to attend Banding Day.
I really care about conserving these animals for the future generations.
Tracy Bostic has hope for his daughter's future.
I think the challenges their generation faces are quite daunting, but it's going to take people like Alex, who runs this program, and then the next generation of people to carry that on. So it's important that they be here to learn about this.
Zoe says she never thought she would have a chance to see, let alone hold, a bird so endangered.
Well, it's just really awesome to hold it. It makes me feel a part of it, and definitely makes me feel like I'm supporting this kind of work.
And Alex's work this year, releasing 24 burrowing owls that she hopes will all make it back to Manitoba next spring. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, near Melita, Manitoba.